Imagine you're 14 years old, right?
Right.
You're legally emancipated.
Wow. Yeah.
The safety net is just completely gone. You're thrust into the adult world, ready or not, and you just have to figure out how to survive.
Which is an incredible amount of pressure for a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So fast forward 10 years, you're sitting down to write a 500-word essay to convince an elite university that you belong in their highly competitive journalism program.
Right.
How do you summarize a life that messy and that intense and honestly that non-traditional into a cohesive narrative?
I mean, it's one of the hardest things to do in writing, frankly. When you have a really complex history, the instinct is usually to either over-explain the trauma or you just try to completely hide the parts of your resume that don't neatly align with your current goal.
Yeah, you just kind of sweep it under the rug.
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got this single piece of source material for this deep dive. It's a 566-word college application essay, and it's titled A Strategic Pivot, Fusing Legacy, Business, and the Newsroom at UConn.
It's a bold title.
It really is. And for you listening, your mission today is to discover how to successfully reframe a major life pivot. Like whether you're changing careers or shifting your major or, just sitting in a job interview trying to explain a weird gap in your resume.
We've all been there.
Right. This essay is basically a blueprint for how to connect a seemingly unrelated past to a highly specific, ambitious future.
And what's so fascinating is the author of this essay, they don't apologize for their detours at all.
No, not even a little bit.
They don't try to hide the zigzagging path they took. Instead, they actually weaponize their past. They show the admissions committee exactly how their previous life was, like the ultimate training ground for this exact moment.
So let's start with that foundation they built. Because before applying to UConn's journalism program, this author had already completed a Bachelor of Business Administration, a BBA, down at Savannah State University.
Right, which is a solid degree.
Yeah, and they didn't just barely scrape by either. They secured a 3.60 major GPA, they racked up academic honors, and they even presented research at an international business conference, the IAB paid.
Which is huge for an undergrad. And they also held really serious leadership roles, too.
Yeah, they were the vice president of professional activities for Delta Sigma Pi.
Right, the major professional business fraternity.
Exactly. And they earned the National Collegian of the Year award for their local chapter.
I mean, winning something like that, it requires intense political networking, organizational skills, and just an ability to execute on a really high level.
Which makes that detail about being emancipated at 14 so crucial to understanding their trajectory, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when you drop a bombshell like, I was emancipated at 14 into an academic essay, it just completely reframes all those business accolades. Like, it changes how we view that entire BBA.
It completely shifts the context, yeah. Because emancipation at 14 implies an immediate, non-negotiable thrust into self-reliance.
Survival.
Exactly. When survival is on the line, the traditional collegiate experience of, finding yourself or exploring random electives, that's a luxury you simply cannot afford.
It's like an analogy I was thinking of. It's like they weren't just getting an education, they were building the scaffolding of a house.
That's a great way to put it.
It's essential for structure and survival, but you still have to build the house itself later. They needed armor.
Yeah.
And a business degree offers stability. It offers a predictable return on investment.
But I'd even push back a little on the idea that it was purely a survival mechanism, because look at the specific rhetorical strategy the author uses to describe this period.
Oh, right, the corporate terminology.
Yeah, they explicitly use words like professional execution and data analysis. They're putting this layer of protective professional polish over what must have been an incredibly vulnerable youth.
Right.
They're essentially telling the admissions committee, I am not a risky bet. I have a proven track record of professional execution.
They actually write that foundational phase is now complete, which is wild. They treat their entire young adult life and their first degree like, phase one of a corporate rollout.
And by framing it as a completed foundational phase, the author strips away any potential narrative that their business degree was a false start or like a mistake.
Right, it wasn't a waste of time.
Exactly. They are asserting control. They're saying, I built the armor I needed, the armor functioned perfectly, and now I'm choosing to take it into a completely new arena.
So the armor is built, the operating system is running smoothly, but what are they actually preparing to fight for,
Right. What's the goal?
Yeah, once you have that stability, what is the ultimate objective? And this is where the essay shifts gears and gives us the why. behind the entire pivot. The author reveals that they have been entrusted to manage the cultural traditions and artifacts of their African-American family's 100-year legacy.
And this isn't just like a box of old photos in an attic somewhere. This legacy is deeply rooted in the low country of Savannah, Chatham County, Georgia. This is an area that's incredibly rich with African-American cultural history.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're talking about Gullah Geechee traditions. It's a unique, deeply rooted culture in the coastal South, known for its distinct language, its agricultural knowledge, and a profoundly deep culture of oral storytelling.
Carries an immense historical weight.
It really does.
It makes me think of, well, another analogy. Imagine you are a museum curator.
Okay.
And you've spent your life meticulously preserving these delicate, precious artifacts. You're making sure they're perfectly cataloged. But then you look around and realize the museum is completely empty.
Oh, wow.
Like no one is walking through the doors. And to ensure people actually experience these exhibits, you realize you have to step out of the quiet archives and become a blockbuster filmmaker. You have to figure out how to broadcast the history to the world.
That's a really powerful analogy. And to take that curator idea a step further, the author explicitly recognizes in the text that broadcasting this history requires a completely different toolkit than the one they currently have.
Right. The business degree isn't enough anymore.
Exactly. They write that this charge requires journalistic rigor, ethical storytelling, and multimedia expertise.
Journalistic rigor. That phrase really stands out to me because when most people think about preserving family history, they think of making a documentary for their relatives or maybe writing a memoir.
Or starting a family blog, yeah.
Right. But this author uses the language of front-page news.
Because they understand that preserving a century of marginalized oral history requires the exact same seriousness, the exact same ethics, and the same investigative skills as breaking a massive news story.
Wow. Yeah.
They aren't just making a scrapbook here. They are actively elevating their family history to the status of a vital historical record. They want to create impactful, documented cultural history that actually stands up to academic scrutiny.
And a business degree, no matter how rigorous it just doesn't teach you that.
No.
It teaches you how to optimize the supply chain, not how to ethically interview an elder about a painful historical memory. So recognizing this gap in their skill set, that's the catalyst.
Right.
It triggers the shift from the boardroom to the newsroom.
And so the author lays out their plan to attend UConn's College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences for a BA in journalism. And to prove they're ready for this, they hit the admissions committee with a wildly diverse list of media experience.
It is a massive list of real-world reps. Like they mentioned marketing project internships with minor league baseball, specifically the Savannah Sandmats, which they make sure to note are now the Columbia Fireflies.
Showing that industry awareness, yeah.
Exactly. And they have experience at a traditional local television news station, WTOC.
Yeah.
But then they pivot to this massive modern media engagement, mentioning work with Jay McKee and Co. and the Club Shay Shay podcast.
Which is just, I mean, going from minor league baseball marketing and local TV news straight to Club Shay Shay.
It's a huge leap.
It's huge. Club Shay Shay is one of the biggest, most culturally relevant podcasts in the sports and entertainment world right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It shows an incredible understanding of the entire media landscape. They understand traditional broadcasting, but they also get hyper-modern, personality-driven digital media.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. If they already have this eclectic mix, right, this massive real-world hustle,
Yeah.
why go back to school at all?
That's the logical question.
Like, if you are already engaging with the team behind Club Shay Shay, you are in the room. Why pay tuition, move all the way to Connecticut, and sit in the classroom when you clearly already know how to network and hustle in the actual industry?
The admissions committee reading this essay would undoubtedly ask that exact same question. Like, why do you need us?
Exactly.
And the author anticipates this, and they address it brilliantly using their own previous rationale. They refer to their business degree as theoretical. They don't view their real-world hustle as a replacement for education. They view education as the mechanism to synthesize that hustle.
They call UConn the missing link, don't they?
Yes, they explicitly write that UConn offers the critical structural framework, to fuse this raw, practical experience with formal training in reporting, editing, and content creation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it. A marketing internship teaches you how to promote a product, right? It teaches you how to make things look good. But journalism is about uncovering the truth, regardless of how it looks.
Right.
The author knows they need to unlearn the promotional habits of marketing and learn the ethical frameworks of journalism.
It's the difference between being a Swiss Army knife and a specialized scalpel.
Oh, I like that.
Right now, this author is a Swiss Army knife. They can do a little bit of everything, some marketing, some podcasting, some local news production. But preserving a 100-year legacy with journalistic rigor, that requires a scalpel.
Precision.
You need precision. You need to know media law, advanced editorial standards, the ethics of source protection. Like, you can hustle all you want, but without that structural framework, you eventually hit a ceiling.
And the structural framework is exactly what allows them to translate their raw drive into specialized authority, because they want to be ready for a highly competitive newsroom environment, specifically focusing on sports and entertainment.
Which brings us to the part of the essay that honestly blew my mind.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Because the author isn't just looking at UConn for its academic curriculum. They are drawn to a very specific, highly competitive aspect of the university's physical culture. They mention their past experience as the team manager for Sol C. Johnson High School basketball.
Right, which establishes a long-standing proximity to sports management and team dynamics.
Right, it sets the stage. But then, they just dropped this line. They stated desire to compete and contribute to the UConn men's basketball team's tradition of excellence should the opportunity arise.
At UConn,
Yeah.
the men's basketball team.
Are you kidding me? The reigning powerhouse. The national champion?
It's unbelievable.
That is bordering on delusional. I mean, it's like applying to an elite, world-renowned culinary school to learn basic knife skills, and then casually adding a note at the bottom of your application that says, oh, by the way, I'd also like to be the head chef of your Michelin star restaurant on the weekends, should the opportunity arise.
That is exactly what it's like.
I read that and almost laughed out loud. Like, is this overreaching? Or is this exactly the kind of unshakable, borderline crazy confidence a top-tier sports journalist actually needs?
I think it is absolute calibrated audacity. And it is entirely intentional.
You think so?
Yes. Look at the psychology of the admissions officer reading this. If we connect this statement back to the personality established in paragraph 1, the emancipated 14-year-old who built their own corporate armor, the BBA honors student, the National Collegian of the Year, this isn't unearned arrogance.
Right, they've proved they can execute.
Exactly. It is a calculated demonstration of their stated, highly competitive spirit.
They even mention having heard and read extensively about the team's distinguished performance. They know exactly what they're asking for.
They do. And honestly, whether or not the author actually makes the elite basketball team as a walk-on or, secures a position managing it is almost beside the point from a strategic admissions perspective.
Wait, so you think putting this in the essay is purely a strategic flex?
Well, the ambition is likely very genuine, given their background. But strategically, including this in a 500-word essay achieves 3 massive things. First, it proves they are absolutely fearless.
True.
You don't aim for the UConn men's basketball team unless you are comfortable in extremely high-pressure environments. Second, it shows they deeply understand UConn's core cultural identity. Like, you cannot talk about the culture of UConn without acknowledging the absolute dominance of its basketball program.
And what's the third thing?
Third, it demonstrates that they possess the exact nerve required to survive in top-tier sports and entertainment media.
Of course.
If you want to be a sports journalist, you have to walk into locker rooms with millionaire athletes and demand answers. You cannot be intimidated by status. By stating they want to be on the team or contributing directly to it, they are signaling to the admissions committee, I view myself as a peer to greatness. I am not just a fan with a microphone.
Wow. Okay. That completely changes how I read that line.
Yeah.
So even if they just end up covering the team for the student paper, they've already signaled that they belong in that high-stakes arena.
Exactly.
They write that UConn represents the convergence of specialized academic resources and a culture of high performance. They aren't just applying to a school. They are seeking an ecosystem that matches their own internal intensity.
It's a brilliant fusion.
Yeah.
They take 3 completely distinct elements of their life: a pragmatic, data-driven business background, a deep, historically weighty family obligation in Savannah, and raw, modern media hustle across sports and entertainment, and they just weave them into an undeniable case for admission.
They didn't apologize for their past. They didn't try to hide the fact that their first degree was in business, not writing. They framed that detour as the exact training ground they needed.
Yes.
They elevated a family history project into a mandate requiring rigorous journalistic ethics.
It's all about taking total control of your narrative architecture. You define what your experiences mean rather than letting the reader guess.
So for you listening, the next time you are sitting across from a hiring manager or trying to write a cover letter and you are worrying about a gap in your resume or a weird career pivot, remember this essay.
Absolutely.
Don't hide the detour. Explain how the detour was the only place you could have possibly learned the exact skills they need right now. Frame your past so perfectly that your future seems inevitable.
Because the experiences you think disqualify you are often the exact things that differentiate you.
That is so true. Before we wrap up, though, there's one final provocative thought. I want to leave you with something to chew on that builds on the deep dive we just did.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, the author talks passionately about using journalistic rigor to document their 100-year family legacy, right?
Right.
They want to apply the ethics and investigative skills of the newsroom to their own bloodline. But traditional journalism relies heavily on objective detachment. You are supposed to be an outside observer, completely free from personal bias.
Whereas family history is, by its very nature, inherently subjective.
Exactly.
It is emotional, it is messy, and it is deeply, inextricably personal.
Right. So as you think about documenting your own history or examining the stories you've been told about your own family, ask yourself, can someone truly be an objective reporter when the subject is their own family?
That's a tough one.
Or does the very act of a journalist investigating and documenting their own bloodline inevitably change the story itself? Like, does the observer effect take over, where the act of recording the history alters the reality of it?
It is a profound intellectual tension. The line between historian and participant becomes beautifully blurred. When you apply front-page scrutiny to a grandmother's oral history, do you preserve the truth, or do you strip away the myth that made the story powerful in the first place?
It's a fascinating question, because at the end of the day, when you step back and look at the trajectory of a person's life, the most compelling stories aren't the ones that follow a straight, predictable line.
Rarely ever.
Sometimes the most undeniable narratives are the ones forged out of absolute necessity, where, a business degree, a minor league baseball internship, and a century-old family legacy all collide to point you exactly where you were meant to go all along. Keep exploring the blueprints of your own story. We'll see you next time.